In modern societies, educational system institutionalized meritocracy. Higher education has been seen as the key pathway for upward social mobility. The whole educational system is viewed as the engines of social mobility. In China, Gaokao is seen as the merit-based selection, the most fair way to ensure social mobility, and it is being viewed as the fateful rite of passage. Can you hear me fine? Okay, I'll continue.
Yes, yes.
Mhm. And at this moment, you may be thinking this is a very familiar story, maybe a story we are too familiar with. There are a huge number of studies revealing educational inequality in higher education in terms of the inequality in accessing elite higher education institutions and in how students experience elite higher education institutions and also in the employment outcomes they got after graduation. Then you may be asking, what's new about this research? And I want to highlight that my research examines this phenomenon from a different angle. It asks a new question. How do disadvantaged students themselves interpret these prevalent inequalities? If you are familiar with Bourdieu's theory, he not only reveals educational inequality existing in the world, he also argues that educational system is a belief-making system. It creates a false image of being fair and neutral and hides the fact of social reproduction. So Bourdieu assumes that people thinks and believes success and failure is merit-based. But the question is it really true? Is it still true these days when we hear more and more people in China talking about lying down? Lying down means the hard work is not valued or working anymore. We cannot get ahead by our own effort. So in this background, it is very important to visit how students view the inequalities and how they view the possibilities of achieving social mobility through education. Do they still believe in educational meritocracy? In a word, there are three approaches to discuss meritocracy. In recent years, Sandel's book, The Tyranny of Merit, is very popular. It represents one approach. He asks a philosophical, ethical question on whether meritocracy is a good principle. Should the society function based on meritocratic principles? The second approach is Bourdieu's approach. Bourdieu argues that meritocracy is an ideology, a false consciousness, a distorted representation the school gives the students to perceive the world. And the third approach is an emergent approach, focusing on public meritocratic beliefs, asking, do the public buy in the meritocracy ideology? Do people really perceive society as merit-based? And this third approach is where my research builds on. Why meritocratic beliefs matter? First, it matters for public attitudes towards social inequality and affirmative policies. Scholars have found that even though China has much higher level of income inequality and wealth inequality than other countries, Chinese show much higher acceptance and tolerance to social inequality because they view it as merit-based. Scholars have called this phenomenon in China as dormant social volcano. If people believe the social stratification is a result of people's own effort and intelligence, then they would be less likely to support affirmative policies aiming at support low-income groups. And for individuals, meritocracy can help them to believe they have control over their life and to maintain aspirations and motivations to achieve better lives through their own effort and doing. Empirical studies have also found that meritocratic beliefs are important for students and families' major and career choices. For example, in the United States, Asian Americans are more likely to choose STEM fields. Sociologists Xie and Goyat, they argue that it is because Asian Americans believe STEM fields are more meritocratic. These fields value hard skills and these can protect Asians from racism stereotypes and discrimination. In China, my colleague Li Huan's research similarly found that working class PhD students have stronger inclination toward academic careers because they view these careers as more merit-based, aligned with their expertise, and had less grant-oriented environment. So my dissertation has two parts. One part uses quantitative methods to analyze international social survey data with latent class analysis. And the other part, this quantitative part compared meritocratic beliefs in Finland, the United States, and China. The qualitative part focused on China. My presentation today will be focused on the qualitative part. And here is the map showing the position of my quantitative research in the field. As you can see from the map, most relevant studies are published around or after 2022. This field is still relatively new and emerging. And my published quantitative article collects two bodies of research. One body is the emergent sociology studies on meritocratic beliefs, and the other is educational studies revealing inequality in higher education. So the focus of this study is meritocratic beliefs of disadvantaged college students at prestigious universities in China. And this population, they are at the intersection of two social positions. One is relatively no social economic status. The other is high educational attainment. There are contradictory theories on how each of the two positions affect their meritocratic beliefs. So first, in terms of social economic status, underdog thesis argues that low-income groups are more likely to question meritocracy because they have first-hand experiences of structural barriers, exclusions, discriminations, and stereotypes. Similarly, self-interest theory argues that because the current system doesn't benefit the disadvantaged groups, they are not motivated to justify it, so they are more likely to question meritocracy and argue for the existence of system inequalities. On the contrary, system justification theory argues that the no-income groups may be more likely to believe in meritocracy because first, human has the inner psychological motivation to see the world as just and fair. And in particular, the disadvantaged groups, they need to have hopes and a sense of agency. They need the hope to believe they can achieve better lives through their own effort and doing. And second, in terms of how educational attainment affect meritocratic beliefs, there are also contradictory theories. First, cultural reproduction theory argues that the more educated groups may internalize meritocracy more than others. Self-interest theory argues that the more educated groups they get higher socioeconomic status, and therefore they are motivated to think the system to justify the system as fair and merit-based. The other theory, Enlightenment thesis, argues that higher education can expose students to the logic of how the society functions and reveal the system and structural barriers behind the social inequality and enlighten students to question meritocracy. So there are all different predictions. When it comes to empirical studies focusing on this particular group, in general, scholars found that across countries, no-income students or first-generation college students or disadvantaged youth, they believe strongly in educational meritocracy. In China, Jing and Bo argued that working class students in elite universities are meritocratic agents. Back in high schools, they wanted to achieve social mobility through education, and their high scores give them positive identity to compensate for their inferiority related to their family disadvantage. In the United States, scholars also argue that schools target low-income students to convey over a simplistic version of meritocracy to them. And in Kenya, teachers reported they feel they need to lie to refugee youth to protect their educational aspirations. So in a word, the existing studies, they have reported the reproduction effects and punitive effects, meaning that students, they do internalize meritocracy and they do get the punitive effects of getting hope from meritocracy. But there are some gaps. The first is when we look at the reality, more and more youth, they are talking about lying down, small town Gaokao experts and 985 losers in China. These discourses are mostly from the groups who are from rural families or low-income families. They are expressing their disappointments that their higher education degrees from good universities cannot change their life. So this conveys a very different image from the previous studies reported. And the second gap is the previous studies didn't integrate life course perspectives. When they talked about these groups' beliefs in meritocracy, they mostly focused on what they believed when they were in high school, focusing on how the schools conveyed meritocracy ideology to these groups. But they didn't describe what happens when they leave schools, when they enter higher education institutions. One study in the United States in 2023 have found that after students entered college, among disadvantaged students, their beliefs in meritocracy started to decline as they interact with more peers from different racial groups and socioeconomic status. The third research gap is the previous studies didn't address dual consciousness in China. My own quantitative analysis and other scholars' work all revealed that in China, people have complex beliefs regarding meritocracy. They don't just believe there are equal opportunities for everyone. Chinese commonly know that everyone are born with unequal starting points to compete with each other. So how do we understand this dual consciousness? This is also not addressed. Then my research asks first two questions, beliefs do and lower middle class colleges have? And the second, have their beliefs changed over time? If so, what are the changes? And the answers for the first two questions are already published. This is the first part of my presentation today. There are two other following questions. The answers to the first two questions are already in the title. They experienced a temporal shift from optimistically believing in meritocracy to disillusionment. Then the following two questions asks, what are the consequences of the disillusionment and how do they cope with it? In terms of methods, this part use quantitative study grounded theory. The participants are from prestigious universities in China, Project 985 universities. The sample include 13 working class students and 13 lower middle class students. There are also 5 upper middle class students as reference group, but the 5 students are not included in analysis yet. And in terms of social class, I used 2 factors to determine social class. One is Hugo, whether they are from the rural or from the urban. The other is Danwei. It means work unit. Danwei is a very special system in China. Even in urban areas, if your parents are working in Danwei related to the state sector, it's much more privileged than other private sectors. Um, yeah, if you look at the sociology studies talking about the social class in China, it's very complex and it's very hard to find a consensus. In my study, I not only focus on rural students or low-income students. As you can see here from the lower middle class group, they are from the urban areas, small cities, not Beijing or Shanghai, Guangzhou, small cities that you have never heard of. They are county-level cities. And their parents, many of their parents, work as a civil servant or teachers, high school teachers or primary school teachers. And their annual family income is not known. When I started this research, I thought I would see the distinctions between working class students and the lower middle class students in how they view meritocracy. But when I was analyzing the data, I found, oh, they show much more in common. Um, the lower middle class students, they don't view themselves as advantaged. They view themselves as disadvantaged, especially when they enter the elite higher education institutions. So my analysis at this stage focused on their similarities, the trend, from the temporal shift trend. And the data were collected online through one-on-one interviews. On average, each interview lasted about 35 minutes. All interviews were conducted in Chinese. The questions are open-ended. Each interview is organized in 3 sections. The first part focused on their past experiences of educational biography, what schools they have went, and what are the reasons they chose those schools. The second part focused on their higher education experiences. And the third part moved to their subjective views on the social stratification and social mobility chances, especially the chances they have through education. The analysis followed the procedure from initial coding to focused coding. So the first part found a very interesting pattern of a temporal shift from optimism to disillusionment. The optimism was carried from their high school socialization, and the disillusionment gradually emerged after they entered higher education institutions. This is what the first part will report. I will show more details about this pattern with two cases. One case is a working class student. This student is from Western rural China. Her parents work as peasants. Their annual family income is 2,000 renminbi. That's very low. It's a typical no income disadvantaged family. Um, she had attended primary school in the rural town and then a county level city a middle school, then a key high school in a bigger city in Western China, still in that province. Her major was social science. And as she moved across educational institutions, she could see social class distinctions when she moved from a rural town to county level city, and then the prefecture level city, then to a provincial capital city in university. And but before higher education, she thought that doesn't matter. Her effort and her educational degrees would override that if she could get a degree from a prestigious university. She recalled that since childhood, I was taught that hard work can change your destiny, or that as long as you put in the effort, you will be rewarded. But as you grow up and experience the world firsthand, you realize that reality is not quite like that. She recalled in the beginning of her college years, during the first year, university felt like a fresh start and a new life. She had endless hopes and ideas about the future. But gradually, starting in the second year, she became aware of things that you simply cannot change, like social class and other structural factors. There are things beyond your control. These awareness are gradually gained from her experience in a prestigious university, from observing the consumptions of her peers and the educational choices her peers make, like going abroad for summer school or putting a lot of money in English boot camp without hesitation, or showing excellent soft skills at leadership skills or interpersonal skills. These things she has observed and reflected that is rooted in their socialization, in their families, which she didn't have. And the other case is from lower middle class. His parents work as a high school teacher or several servant, and their annual family income is slightly above 100K renminbi annually. This is above the average income in China. This is the middle income group. But he similarly felt that his fate is not good enough. He had to change the fate in their schools. In high school, there were motivational slogans like "Defy fate and change your destiny." In small city, people generally felt their fate was not good enough. When he first entered university, he began to feel that such words were almost deceptive. So this is the basic pattern they experienced. As for why they experienced the shift, it is mostly caused by the differences between high school system and higher education system. In high schools, there are prevalent school discourses convening the idea of meritocracy, and it is overly simplistic meritocracy. It's almost correspondency between your degree and your future socioeconomic status. This message is used widely in Chinese schools in small cities to motivate students, especially students from rural areas or small cities. And the second is they did benefited from the hope meritocracy give them the aspiration that they can go to the big city one day and find a good job and change their fate. That give them a very definite sense of certainty, something they can strive for and work for. Another third factor I analyzed is the high stability high schools create. First, the rules are very clear and fixed. You own the game rule is only about score, nothing else. The routines are very rigid. You just move between your dorms, classrooms, and cafeteria. Your schedules are fixed from 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. And you don't have much time off to get exposed to the world outside of the school. And in the school, students are asked to wear uniforms. Consumptions are downplayed in these fields to make a declassing environment as if class doesn't matter. So high school represent kinds of meritocratic bubble to factor their hopes and beliefs in meritocracy. These represent highly settled times filled with high stability. And sociological theories reveal that in settled times with high stability, people are more likely to accept the social cultural scripts given them without reflections. But when they moved to higher education institutions, there are two huge changes, and they are the reasons driving the rising disillusionment. The first reason is their increased awareness of social stratification. In China, because the higher education admission quota is not distributed equally across provinces. Cities like Beijing or Shanghai, they have much higher ratio of getting into prestigious universities. So in prestigious universities, the majority group is from big cities like Beijing or Shanghai. And because of family background, even in each province, students from the capital city are more likely to get into these universities. So when disadvantaged group students get into this environment, they are exposed to the circles that were outside of their reach before. This increased their knowledge of how stratified the society is. For example, they talked about their peer composition. They were describing that when they moved from primary school to middle school to high school, the difference is not that huge. Everyone was probably more or less the same. Some are from the rural, some are from the city, but still not that different. But once you get to the university, the variance becomes really large, and the mean is much higher. And another example showed how how high the mean they perceive to be. I was asking the participant, what do you think makes someone a middle class? And she calmly said, probably a monthly salary of 50,000 renminbi. I was very surprised because that's very high. She said she read it online. She thinks it's true because most of her classmates' family can reach that level from her perception. And another lower middle class students from a small city said when when he was in the small city, he was the relatively better off student because his family, his parents are high school teacher or civil servants. Both are very desired occupations in China. But when he got to university, he became the financially disadvantaged student. By comparison, others come from much better families. And before, in the small city, compared with others, his parents value education very much. But in higher education, in college, his classmates' parents are professors or other professionals. They would think much further for their education and have plans for them to go abroad to receive PhD degrees and then return back home as academia. But when they described their hopes to study abroad to their parents, they are reminded of, oh, you don't know your own position. You are imagining too much. And the second reason driving this rising disillusionment is the increased importance of cultural capital and economic capital. They found they lack the cultural knowledge navigating college. And they lack the valued soft skills, social skills, and worldly knowledge beyond scores. Because in big cities like Beijing or Shanghai, the schools, even the high schools, are less exam oriented. Students had more time to explore extra curriculum activities, and their schools do have these resources. So they went to higher education institutions with social club organization experiences. By comparison, the students from small cities and rural areas seem very lost and feel they lack those skills needed to fit in. They do have a strong strength in academic excellence, but it's not valued in high school, in higher education as much as in high school. And one example mentioned by many participants is their desire to study abroad. Some said, I don't know why studying abroad is better than studying at home, but all the good students want to study abroad, and my professor suggested studying abroad. So this desire is fed to them, and when they discuss with their parents, this always cause a lot of tensions and conflicts. Um, and I want to mention two other studies published in the same year, echoing with my conclusion. One study is published on sociology of education. They used quantitative studies they used survey data on college students in Beijing, and they similarly found that over years in higher education, students from lower income families, they gradually get more awareness of the importance of structural factors in determining one's success chances and life outcome. By comparison, their advantaged peers had the awareness of structural factors at the beginning of their higher education years. So the disadvantaged groups were just catching up. And the other study is focusing on the whole population in China, not just the college students. One of the author, White, did a survey more than 10 years ago, arguing that China is a dormant social volcano. Even though social inequality is high, people are very tolerant of it and are very optimistic about the upward mobilities. But when they did the survey again in recent years, the article is published in 2025, they found people in China generally are turning from optimism to pessimism. They are getting less and less optimistic about the upward mobility chances. And this is a graph from an article recently published analyzing the historical changes. China is not part of the analyzed sample, but as you can see here, Japan shows many similarities with China in context. And in Japan, between 1988 and 2020, people are uh, believing less in effort, hard work, but believing more in the importance of family wealth. This trend is different from what many other countries, especially Western countries, show. So there are some important implications for future research. First is what are the long-term consequences of disadvantaged students' emergent disillusionment? Will this lead to future disengagement or voluntary educational withdrawal and even active resistance against schools in China? And the second is with the social media spreading all doubts college students are raising about meritocracy. Will the youth already have doubts on meritocracy at an early stage when they are in primary schools or high schools? Among my participants, when they grow up, they believed in school, and that made them feel very hopeful and motivated them to study hard. But if current high school kids or primary school kids are already skeptical of the educational meritocracy, what does it mean for their mental health and educational attainment? And the third implication is about international student mobility. When they study abroad and see different social system, when they have comparisons on the meritocratic degrees across countries, will this affect their decisions on staying abroad or returning home?
Already have two questions in the chat. The
Mhm,
first one, I will read it. The
mhm,
first one is by Peng Juan Wang. She says, thank you, Julia, for your excellent presentation. My question is, as you mentioned at the beginning, beliefs in meritocracy may vary across disciplines. In your finding, did the participants' sense of disillusionment also differ across disciplines? Actually, let me add to this because I had the same question,
mhm,
but I would like to
mhm,
add not only across disciplines,
mhm,
but also across locations of the university and the universities themselves, because some might be more elitist than others.
mhm.
So that's the question.
Mm-hmm. That's very important questions. Let me start from the second part, the location of the universities. In my sample, I recruited participants from different. I recruited participants online, so I didn't rely on one single university. The participants are from different areas. Some are in some universities are in Shanghai or Beijing, and many are from the in middle part, the capital cities of a middle province in China. That is not the most. That is not the most the most modern city in China. Not as extreme as Beijing or Shanghai, but still they see similar patterns. Um, so across the university locations, there were not that much variation from my observation. And the second part is disciplinary differences. There are some minor differences. Some participants are from social science, especially news, communication related majors. When they described their peer composition in higher education, it's much more extreme than others from STEM. It seems that these majors attract a larger percentage of students from higher socioeconomic status. And when these participants about described the comparison among peers, they would mention their peers posting 10,000 yuan helicopter ride or driving a luxury car on campus. Many details. And the girls saying that monthly salary of 50,000 RMB is normal among her peers is also in major related to news and communication. I think this aligns with some patterns observed in the United States. Advantaged students are more likely to choose these majors. And one participant has changed her major from a STEM related major, biology, to this news and communication major. She also observed some rise of variance and means in the peers.
Mm.
Over, over.
Julia, you can stop sharing and maybe turn on the camera. Maybe
Ah,
it will be fine
mhm.
now. Let's
I
try
thought I
that
will.
way.
Okay.
So if you stop the sharing, it should be fine,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and then you can turn on the camera. It should be okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So please do continue.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's my answer for the question. There were some minor variations. It would be interesting to continue analyzing the variations in future. And because this is the first article I'm publishing from this data set, I was starting from the common patterns, the most obvious pattern.
Right, right. Okay, Monique, you have a question? Do you want to ask the question yourself?
Yes. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Professor Julia. Thanks for your fascinating sharing. That's really interesting. I would like to have a question that during your interviews, would you ask in interviews how participants identify their own social classes? Because
Mhm,
sometimes income-based class categories don't
mhm,
match people's self-perception. For example, someone may earn a low salary in a state job, government job,
mhm,
putting them in a lower class by income, but they
mhm,
still receive quite high, but they still receive extra respect from others or have grandparents with some social influence. So that might lead them to see
mhm.
themselves as middle class or higher. So do you think these differences between objective measures and the subjective classes identification affect the results? Thank you.
Thank you for asking that. I did ask for their subjective social class identity. I recruited participants through online screening questionnaire, and in that questionnaire, I asked them to identify their social class categories from five categories: low class, lower middle class, upper middle class, and upper class. I did combine their subjective judgment and other indicators of income, parents' occupation, and their Hugo in and categorizing their social class in my presentation. And eventually, I highlighted Hukou and their parents' occupation, whether it's a state-related danwei or not, as the two most important dimension. I combined them because I was researching beneath how they perceive social stratification and their positions in that. So subjective identity is a very important part, especially in interviews. I would recall, oh, you identified yourself as a lower middle class or no class. Could you explain why that is your identity? It opens the door to talk about family background, because when you ask for family income directly, it's very sensitive, and usually you don't get accurate number. Either they don't know the accurate number or they don't feel comfortable enough to share. So in the interview, it's important. It's a good way for me to gather their justification for their own position. In terms of whether they are how subjective identity differ from objective social class origin, there are a lot of literature discussing even among objective definition of social class, there is no consensus. You can use the occupation, income, and many other dimensions. There is no consensus. And between subjective identity and objective part, it would be hard to find them 100% matching with each other, but there are some general trend, across the world. Scholars have found people generally tend to identify towards the middle. Lower middle class would identify them as middle. Upper middle class would identify them as middle. That's also I think that pattern also matches with my sample. If you are interested, you can search for those literature. I hope this answers your question.
All
Thank you for
right.
the explanations.
All right. Thank you. All right. The next question is by Jisun Jung. Do you want to ask the question?
Yes, thank you, Julia. This is really interesting, and I think this is quite global phenomenon. We also find very same these younger people's perception about their social status. So it was great. My question is, in your study, the merit is, it looks like effort, like hardworking, kind of almost equally interpreted in that sense. But merit is more kind of broader concept, including their knowledges, the skills, the GPA achievement. For me, these students already have quite merit because they are in a 985 universities, meaning they had a quite high Gaokao score. I was expecting they also see themselves as having sort of merit compared to, those ones who couldn't make those universities, meaning they can also make more merit by making like high GPA. And I know Chinese students, they compete for a lot of awards, all different types of making very specific skills to distinguish themselves in the labor market, all these things. So I wonder if participants also had a sort of a broad understanding how they see the merit beside this making effort, working hard, the kind of attitude side, something that they have a more broad understanding of merit. Thank you.
Thank you. So let me rephrase my understanding of the question.
Sure.
I understand. It's so you were talking about that merit has many different parts: effort, GPA, and resilience, other qualities. Do they understand merit from this sense? Yeah, that's a very interesting question. Thank you. So merit is very subjective. If we use Bourdieu's theory, the advantaged groups, they have the power to suddenly design what becomes the merit, and in the participants' narrative, I would say they have broader understanding of what merit is after getting into higher education institutions. Before that, it was very narrow. First, your high GPA, high Gaokao scores. That was the only merit they were striving for, and it requires effort, requires resilience, and many other qualities. Gaokao score was the eventual measure of the merit. But after higher education, they recognized that GPA is not that important anymore. For example, you need to engage in extracurriculum activities, student organizations, and you need to show some confidence at interpersonal interaction, how to interact with professors, with peers, and show knowledge about the world. Many often mentioned 见识. 见识 in Chinese means knowing the world. Their peers from Beijing or other bigger cities, they have much more knowledge beyond what they have learned from high school textbooks. They and beyond this, so this all become what they view as merit as they get more experiences in higher education. But I would also argue that this is also the middle class norms working to justify that they eventually blame themselves for lacking the skills, lacking the soft skills to stand out in higher education, lacking the knowledge to navigate the world, to organize things, this and that. And go back to the definition of merit. The measurement of meritocratic belief is a very complex issue because it can be very subjective. Even if you use GPA, effort, or any indicator, it is controversial. But when we want to measure something in empirical studies, it's better to start from some simple indicator and to build from there. Traditionally, scholars have relied more on effort because the representative scholars think effort is more it is less dependent on family background, because when we talk about the GPA, it can be the reflection of your family advantage or disadvantages. So effort is the traditionally most used indicator, but now with my research and other scholars' research in quantitative measures, it's also shifting towards a multidimensional approach.
All right, thank you very much. Next question by Andrew Juncker. Do you want to ask the question yourself? I don't know if...
I'm here, sorry.
Oh, okay, perfect.
Yeah, thank you. No, I was thinking about sort of a reverse implication of this fascinating study, which is that your subjects had to get to a 985 school in order to enter your sample. So they're already quite elite successful in the system. And well, everybody probably graduating at the Tudong level, which is everybody, should will have already been kind of indoctrinated and believers in the meritocracy that you already noted that happens. So basically, it would seem like the vast majority of the population that doesn't reach these elite conditions might never have the opportunity to reflect on them critically and discover and become sort of cynical elites, which is probably a badge of elitism, actually. And then instead that they would spend their whole lives explaining their low social achievement based on the meritocracy, which they couldn't succeed in.
Yes.
So in fact, it seems to me it's quite the opposite implication of a social volcano. It seems like it's a tremendously successful system at reproducing this ideology of meritocracy. And it doesn't really matter that much that the top elites are burnt out.
Thank you. It's a very interesting perspective, and I actually did started with a broader sample. I also interviewed college students at very ordinary local universities, not even 211 project university. That's like the second tier in Chinese higher education system. And I did notice the phenomenon you described. For the students in local ordinary universities, they didn't show that much skepticism towards meritocracy. They think if they didn't get it, they think that's because they didn't get into the best universities. If they had worked harder at getting into the 95 universities, they won't face the limitations they have. This is one pattern, and the other pattern is their peer composition is much different. It's not that dominated by big city upper middle class students. They didn't show that cultural shock of, oh, the society is so stratified. I found I am at such a low social position.
Hmm.
Well,
All
that's
right.
interesting. I hope you include that in your
Yeah.
final interpretation because it seems
Mhm,
significant.
mhm. Yeah, thank you.
Or eventually in a comparative study, because that would be interesting, right? All right. So next question, Peter Wana, are you there? Peter?
Yes, I'm
Okay.
here.
Oh, perfect. Do you want to ask
Yes.
the question yourself?
I asked two questions, and one of it was on what could be the done to protect this merit, because I think merit still holds some significance in life, of course, under whatever definition. So what could be done to avoid the loss of this merit, especially to those graduates that feel disenfranchised? And again, could this also affect education, the formal education as we know it? Especially AI is coming to take most of this job that people could say, I can do this better. So those merits now AI can do them better. So those people who didn't do well in schools, they are now doing better out here in society. So that somehow, in my view, seems to discourage formal education. So does the author think that could also be an effect, in my view?
Peter Wana, if you don't mind, would you mind adding also, because you also wrote a quite interesting other question, which I think links to this one. You wrote about, that this trend could be a death blow to merit in formal education, especially coupled by trends in AI and societal evidence of people who didn't do well in school but earning a lot, showing off in social media. So this is also quite provocative and quite nice. And if you can take this question also into account, Julia, would be great.
Okay, let me start with the first one. So if I understand correctly, the first one is about what can we done to avoid the loss of significance of merit in the system. Is that correct?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. What can be done to avoid the loss of significance in the merit? That is the goal of this research and other scholars researching this want to give. Eventually, we are arguing for less structural barriers. We are arguing towards equal starting opportunities for students from all kinds of backgrounds to compete in schools, even though there are a lot of problems related with competition, even though there are two mobility models. One is tournament mobility models, that's open competition, and it values achievement. The other is sponsor-based mobility model. In this second model, your family backgrounds matter for your starting points. Even though the first model is not ideal, in my personal view, it's still better than the second one. What I hope is we move first towards the tournament mobility model. For example, in China's context, even though Gaokao is viewed as a fair system, the quota distribution of college admission is not equal across different provinces. The more advantaged provinces or cities have a higher ratio, the students have more chances to get into better universities. In such systems, we could start with maybe not making the quota distribution not that unequal, and also there are mismatches between high schools and higher education. For the participants in my study, they worked very hard in high schools, but they only work towards scores, and the Gaokao score doesn't matter in higher education. So their effort was wasted towards a meaningless goal. That's why they feel so disillusioned. One approach would be not to focus all the definition of merit on scores, but to give them opportunities to develop the skills they need in higher education. For example, one participant in my working class sample, she was from a bigger city, a provincial capital city. She went to a high school that has opportunities to join broadcasting clubs and other student organizations. So when she went to higher education, she has already accumulated some experiences. Then she faced less structural barriers than others. So from my point of view, this is also something we could do to reduce the mismatch between high school, primary school, and higher education. And the second question, is it, if I understand it correctly, is it about that now social people can earn a lot of money even though they don't have high educational attainment. They can earn money by becoming influencers and or AI or other skills. I'm kind of lost about the question part. How do we? Sorry.
Okay, maybe I can clarify just a bit.
Uh,
Could this loss of merit from your study
mhm,
be a blow to formal education? And especially now
mhm,
that AI is taking much of the jobs that were
mhm,
previously available for even those people who would say they were merit, now there will be so many
mhm,
of them, and therefore education will be meaningless in a way.
mhm. Well, that's a very interesting big question. I'm not sure I have answers to, but I will try. I, I think it's great that people can make money without formal educational attainment, because we know in educational system, advantaged students have more economic, cultural, and social capital to get better university degrees. So they have advantage. If there are other other opportunity, other pathways that can have more diverse pathways, and instead of putting all the population to compete in one track. And in China's marketization reforms, it's not only Gaokao giving upward mobility chances to the population. Many also achieved by doing small business or others. I don't think it's a I don't think it's a challenge to merit. The broader definition of merit beyond scores or college degrees is good for a more open society, in my view. And as for AI, that's a very big challenge. I am trying to understand. I even in higher education, even when I was at Berkeley, even without AI, we were many of the students were relying on YouTube to learn things. And in the United States, people would go to boot camps, like computer science boot camps, to get a certificate. And even they don't have any bachelor's degree or master's degree in computer science, they could get a job with those boot camp training experiences when the economy was better. Now the chances may be lower, but still, it's possible. I don't. I think that's a good system to not rely only on educational degrees, because educational degrees, if you in educational degrees, it's very accumulated. If you missed the chance in high school, you may not get into good university and then not getting into good graduate schools. But if there are other opportunities, you could always make changes in your life when there are chances. I don't think these answer your questions. But that's the best I can try at this point.
You did a lot. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you very much. Okay, time is short, so I will go for the last question, which I will read. The question is from Xi'an Liu, who says, thank you for your insightful presentation, Professor Julia. I really appreciated how you connected meritocratic beliefs to students' lived experiences in elite universities. I have one question. Since your participants come from 985 institutions, how do you analytically separate, a sense of disadvantage that comes from comparing themselves with more privileged peers on campus from structural disadvantages rooted in family background, region, and unequal access to resources?
If I understood correctly, the question is about how do I separate their advantage of the university degree and the disadvantage of their family disadvantage. Is that the...
Let me reread it. How do you analytically separate a sense of disadvantage that comes from comparing themselves with the more privileged peers on campus from the structural disadvantages that are rooted in family background, region, and unequal access to resources?
The question is about how do I separate...
All right, maybe a little bit of a connectivity issue. Let's just wait. Oh, great. Julie's back. Fantastic.
I'm back. Okay. So if I understood correctly, the question is about how do I separate their subjective perception of their disadvantage based on peer comparison and their structural disadvantage.
Yeah, that is rooted in family background, region where they come from, unequal access to resources.
So in my analysis, it's eventually about how they subjectively view their social positions and social mobility chances. So their subjective comparison is very important for my analysis. And even in other scholars' study in the United States, they previously reported that students tend to compare themselves with more advantaged groups and view themselves as the disadvantaged group. That pattern is very obvious in my lower middle class participants. They compare more with the upper middle class students from big cities, but not comparing that much with rural counterparts. And as some cases show, their subjective perceptions may not be accurate. For example, when they think 50,000 yuan is the normal middle class family income, that's far from the social reality. Not many family can get that salary in China. Do I separate them? In this article, I didn't analyze these variants, but I did highlight the role of their subjective perception. I didn't separate them because in interviews, I usually restrain from giving subjective judgments, saying you are wrong or this is not the reality. And in analysis, I also try to report more from their subjective perspective. And if the I think that the difference is about the degree, not about the nature. If the nature is opposite, if they are from structurally disadvantaged families, but they think they are advantaged, that could be something worthy of another article to highlight. But in my participants, I think it's more about the difference in degree, not in nature.
All right. We have a very last minute burning question, which I will ask Gao Chang to ask really quick, so that we also can conclude the seminar. Gao Chang, do you want me to ask the question or can you?
Oh, well, I can do it myself.
Wonderful.
Sorry for the last minute question. So as Professor Hugo mentioned during the presentation, there's not many students who wanted to study abroad. And however, I was thinking that students who have this kind of overseas study experiences would definitely affect their ideas towards this meritocracy, and they will have different view of it. So I would like to ask, will you consider this as an influence factor for their attitude changes or to all of this? And thank you very much.
Well, so if I understood correctly, you were asking, do I consider the among the international students, do this belief in meritocracy matter for their choices? Is that you were asking?
So basically,
Yeah, kind of,
okay.
but like not international students, but like the Chinese students who have this kind of international overseas experiences, like it's exchanges or they have actually studied abroad for a while, and so they have this kind of experiences to go through all the meritocracies abroad. So they probably have different kind of view towards like the Chinese version. So would you consider this as a part of influence factors? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. That's very interesting. There are some such participants in my sample, and for example, one is from upper middle class family in Beijing. She got degrees in France, a top school in France, and then a top school in the UK. This is one example, and she would think China's Gaokao system and overall social system is more meritocratic than American system or other Western system. She was saying, like, for Ivy League schools, if your parents donate 1 billion to the university, your seat is guaranteed, and you need to rely on many other resources like reference or other opportunities. China just requires scores. It's it's more open to everyone than than other societies. This is her perception. And the other comparison case is a student from a rural village. He got his PhD in the UK. He shows different changes in the perception. He compared the UK with the China, and his change was that he recognized Western societies was putting in more efforts to ensure that everyone has a relatively decent bottom line. Based on my recall of these two representative comparison cases, we could say that comparison gained through exchange studies or overseas studying experience can change their perceptions, and this change can also be affected by their previous beliefs or their previous social class positions.
All right. Excellent, Julia. Thank you very much. Monica already put here the next event, but thank you so much, Julia. Thank you so much for everybody who asked questions. And please do continue to come. We continue to have really good presentations such as this one with, hard questions, but good ones. I think fair questions. And we have, a nice interaction. So I'll see you next time. And have a nice week, everybody, and an even better weekend. All right? All right.
Thank you all for the inspiring
Bye-bye.
questions. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.